particular foods you're gonna miss when you go back?
I will definitely miss beshbarmak. My knowledge of Kazakh geography is probably even better than American. Variety is the spice of life. There's a deficit currently in the United States in terms of knowledge about this region and about Kazakhstan in particular. Yes, that's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Ambassador, welcome to the next episode of Travel Boldcast. The reason we dubbed it this way in order to support the recent campaign that we started jointly with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs called Bold Kazakhstan, in order to reflect on the past, on the nomadic past of Kazakhstan, how I guess brave and courageous our ancestors were, and how that helped us to shape present day Kazakhs, how adaptable they are to current situations, how quick they are with making decisions, and so on. So I kind of tweaked the name podcast to Boldcast because it's also a candid talk. I mean, I understand your position, but you're free to share any comments, and hopefully we both of us will get a lot of insight from this conversation. I understand this is your last day in your current assignment in the region, 5 years. I mean, it's such a long term. So thank you once again for finding time and then accepting our invitation.
Thank you for the invitation, and I'm really happy to be here. Because it's my last day, the last day of my mission in Kazakhstan, I can be especially bold, and I'll be retiring soon from the State Department. So I'll be very bold today. If my staff hear me say something that I shouldn't, they'll come in, they'll interfere and stop me. But seriously, I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's been a wonderful term here in Kazakhstan, and before this in Uzbekistan. Central Asia is dear to me, and I'm really I'll bring many very good memories with me back home.
Excellent. 5 years in the region, that's perhaps the longest you lived outside of the United States. And any particular foods you're going to miss when you go back?
I will definitely miss beshbarmak because it's not so easy to find in the United States, although not impossible. And
especially with the horse meat.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with the horse meat. I also, I grew to love both here and of course in Uzbekistan, plov. And all its varieties, regional varieties. And so I have a recipe, as ambassadors, we often have, usually we're provided with a staff to help us in our, to entertain and host people. So I've had cooks both in Tashkent and in Astana, excellent cooks. And my cook in Tashkent once gave me a plov lesson, a preparation lesson. It was actually during COVID, and I was stuck in the house a lot, during the COVID pandemic. And so we went outside, and he went through all the steps. So when I go home, I hope to prepare Central Asian plov. Maybe I'll learn beshbarmak as well, but I'll miss those things.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Do you like Tashkent or Samarkand plov? Which one would you prefer?
I think I actually prefer the Samarkand plov.
Samarkand, the one with layers, yes, and with the meat on top. Okay.
Yeah, but the other plov I had that was unusual and delicious, I think, was in Kazakhstan. Wow. So when I visited, I several times went to Nukus and visited Kazakhstan, and I know Kazakhstan culture is in many ways much closer to Kazakh traditions than Uzbek. But there they prepared plov with turkey meat. Okay. And it's delicious. I mean, turkey is less oil, it has less oil. It's less greasy. And it was absolutely delicious. So that's one thing I'll remember, very clearly is that
maybe on one of the Thanksgiving days you'll have plov with turkey.
Yes, that's a great idea.
I heard you visited all the provinces of Kazakhstan. Last time we met, you were at 15 or 16. You were about to go to Kostanay, and I think you visited Pavlodar. Probably
I did, yeah. So
I made list as well.
Absolutely, I made it. Yeah, when I saw you, I was at 15. I went to Kostanay in December, and in January, earlier this month, I visited Pavlodar, which was the 17th region. So I managed to get to all regions plus the 3 major cities.
Right.
And it was, well, first of all, I'm proud of our embassy team for managing to get me everywhere, because logistically it wasn't easy. But more importantly, it was just an incredible experience, both to see the variety of your country, the cultural, geographical, and in every other way, you know, how different regions are from each other. Although with some common elements too, which you would expect in a nation, in a single nation, but great variety, and most of all, I'll remember the people that I met, both their hospitality and the warmth with which they hosted us,
right,
and you know, showing traditional Kazakh hospitality, but also what I learned from them. You know, they were all my teachers. They shared with me local history, local customs and traditions. I usually went to the regional history museum in every region and had a tour. They shared with me what they were doing in their lives, both, you know, to really improve their communities and help their country succeed. And I was just so impressed across the board, everything from, you know, universities and talking to the students and the faculty at universities, visiting enterprises everywhere, and from very small companies to huge industrial enterprises. I remember visiting Kazzinc in Akçube, I think it was. No, Kazzinc was in Üskümen. And in Akçube it was Kazkrom. So I've done both. And I went to Kazakh Mus in Ulutau in Zhezkazgan.
That's what we call industrial tourism, yes, visiting all these plants and factories.
Tourism, yes. That's a specialized kind of tourism that is maybe not for everyone, but it was great, you know, just opened my eyes to these things. So visiting enterprises, talking to business people, and also experiencing in every region usually something of the nature, you know, whether it was a river, whether it was mountains, whether it was the steppes, you know, I got to sample the beautiful nature of Kazakhstan. So anyway, I feel very lucky to have had that experience.
Excellent. Any resemblance with the United States in terms of nature, landscapes?
Yeah, some resemblances. Yeah. Oh, actually, I will confess that my knowledge of Kazakh geography is probably even better than American. And I think this is typical of a lot of people. When you live in a foreign country, you explore and you're taken out to see all the sights and learn everything. In your own country, you stay home more, you know.
Probably neglect some of the
and so
opportunities.
There are big parts of the United States I've never had a chance to see. But yes, there are some similarities. I went to Sharon Canyon in Almaty region, and of course, the comparison to the Grand Canyon, it's smaller, that's acknowledged, but it's equally beautiful, it's stunningly beautiful. And the steppes that I saw in so many regions, especially in the north, in my drives, or even just driving to Pavlodar last week, we drove through the steppes, snow-covered, of course. But do resemble and have a lot of similarities to our what we call the plains in the middle of America. You know, similar. The appearance is similar. The ecosystem is very similar, and the kinds of plants that you find, the kinds of animals, and of course the mountains especially in the south and the east of Kazakhstan. Some of them resemble mountains I've seen out west, and our western states like Colorado and Utah and so on. There's a little bit of a resemblance there. So, but it's as they say, the old saying is variety is the spice of life. That's an English saying, and so I think having the variety of Kazakhstan and the differences for me was also really, really special.
Excellent. Well, great to hear this. Yes, and since you know Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, we take this brotherhood on the next level. We say it's in terms of tourism, it's more coopetition. Yes, we are probably competing a little bit, but it's more about complementing each other. Would you agree to this statement that we know strongholds of Uzbekistan, definitely culture heritage of those mausoleums and madrasas intact, actually, standing there for centuries. And then there is Kazakhstan with a pinch of modernity, and then there is a lot of adventure opportunities with 14 national parks and so on.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I like that word coopetition. Is that what you call it?
Yes.
Yeah, the blend of the two. And of course, I mean, across the board, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan have so much to share, so much in common, but also important differences. And it's actually, I have to say, just reflecting on my time as a diplomat, focusing on Central Asia, it's been so gratifying for me to see the positive trajectory of the relationship between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. When I started my focus on Central Asia, I've been coming to this region off and on for more than 30 years, actually since the early 1990s. But it was really 2014 when I became obsessed, you might say, because of my job. I was the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Central Asia back in Washington. And from that time to today, there's been just a positive development. I think some of it had to do with a change in leadership in Uzbekistan, frankly.
That's true.
But today, it's so clear that the two countries view each other as strategic partners, even more than strategic partners, almost allies, and
allies, exactly.
Yeah, and it's and I think it's very positive for both countries, but also for the world, the region and the world. So I'm very pleased to see that. And I do think there are interesting complementarities, as you were saying, in a lot of respects, in a lot of ways, economically speaking, and also kind of from a tourism perspective, the kind of the things you can see. And I have to say, I've had a little experience since I've been in Astana with helping people plan trips to the region. Okay. Because when I've had visitors come, both relatives, and friends, I always tell them, if you're coming all this way, of course it's nice you want to see me, but you have to see the countries, and you should definitely go to Uzbekistan too. You shouldn't just come to Kazakhstan, and they usually do. And so they do a trip. They'll go to the big Silk Road cities, to Bukhara, Samarkand, maybe Khiva. Spend a little time in Tashkent, and then they'll fly from Tashkent to Almaty, spend a few days in Almaty, then come see me in Astana. And if they have more time, I recommend that they go to some other parts of Kazakhstan too. Right. But at least
or the region. Yeah, you've probably heard of this tour called 5 Stands. Yes, visiting all the Central Asian republics.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah, they have those too. And but anyway, I agree with your characterization of this, kind of complementarity that is a very good thing from many perspectives.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of the economy, where do you see the niche of Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, or the Central Asia in the global, I guess, picture? Is it more transit, or it's tourism, or it's both?
Yeah. I think that both countries have been striving to get beyond being a niche, I would say, which is a good thing, because so I could say, well, the niche is economically is raw materials, critical minerals, oil and gas, uranium, all those things. But that's important. Those are very important resources that both countries have, both Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, and have brought over the years a lot of revenue and made possible growth and increase in the quality of life for their citizens. But importantly, I think both governments recognize that there is a danger to being stuck as raw material providers. Exactly. That is not where you want to be if you want, especially as the expectations of your population grow for better education, for different kinds of jobs, higher status jobs, you might say, or higher paying jobs. And for that reason, it's important to diversify and to find many niches or a number of niches. So, and I think there's been a lot of success, again, in both places in that respect. And one way of looking at it is to see the kinds of investment that foreigners are making in those economies. And I've seen this here in Kazakhstan, early on, the vast majority of U.S. investment was in the oil sector. And everyone knows, the role that companies like Chevron and ExxonMobil played in the early development of your country when it was just independent. But now, today, the picture is much more diverse. And, and it's a good thing that it is. I mean, we have big industrial enterprises outside of the oil sector, the energy sector, that are established here. There's this company called Wabtec, which produces locomotives for freight trains. It's the major provider of locomotives to Kazakhstan, and they've been here a number of years already. And they just renewed their investment, added another, 100 billion or something like that to what they had already invested.
There was General Electric at some point.
It started as General Electric. There's been the company itself has kind of changed its ownership a little, but it was GE when they started. And then we have, big multinational U.S. companies like Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola,
of course,
Honeywell, Bechtel, many others and they're doing things in it might be consumer goods, it might be transportation, it might be healthcare, like healthcare products. And those investments have been increasing continually over even just in the 2 years I've been here, but in the lead up to that as well.
Right.
So that the mix of U.S. companies is very different. And that's a reflection, I think, of how Kazakhstan's economy has developed, so that it isn't just in the energy niche or the whatever. But you mentioned tourism, and I do think that both Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan have tremendous potential to be significant tourist destinations, and to have that be an important driver of economic growth. When I was in Uzbekistan, I was very aware of conscious efforts by the government to promote that, including establishing a new tourism university, I think in Samarkand.
In Samarkand, correct.
Yeah. And I know in the time I've been here that there's a similar drive, a similar push to do the same for Kazakhstan, which I think is extremely smart. It's a smart move.
There is a university, as our sister company, also belongs to the Ministry of Tourism and Sports. It's International Hospitality and Tourism School in Turkistan. Actually, we intentionally placed it there in order, and you know the story of Turkistan. It's thousands of years of history, and UNESCO World Heritage Mausoleum in there. So we wanted to raise the profile of the city. That's why the school was placed there. And last year we saw the first graduation with 500 plus students entering the market of hospitality and tourism.
How many? The program is how many years to get a degree?
It used to be 4 years. Now they shortened it to 3 years. And out of those 3 years, you don't have to be on campus. You can be working at Hilton or in Rixos Aktau, but you still take your classes online.
I see.
And I think it was a smart move.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
You have to stick to the industry, actually, from early days.
Excellent.
Yes, and of course, we're trying to promote jointly with Uzbekistan, with our friends in Kyrgyzstan, but without the direct flight, and hopefully it will come to existence very soon with the United States. The market has been slightly outside of our radar, to be honest. As Kazakh tourism, we would be looking at the shorter haul destinations in order to get the better return for our buck. But of course, once there is direct flight and there is a visa-free regime for the U.S. nationals, of course, we'll be putting more efforts into marketing to that particular market. And in marketing, there are several phases you have to go through in order to break perception barriers of potential travelers. One of them, I guess the first one is called general awareness, when people just kind of know that such country exists, so it doesn't sound like Krakozhye from Tom Hanks' movie, the terminal, so that they would know the country is real. And one of the notoriously famous Kazakh journalists already made that job for us in in the United States. And I guess we have to shift to the next stage, which is the regional awareness and product awareness. So people would know Almaty, they would know Astana, they would know Turkistan, and then exactly what can be seen there, what sightseeings there are, and so on.
Right.
In this sense, what do you think we should start with in order to kind of tell to American travelers what sort of travel products, whether it's ecotourism or it's culture or it's gastronomy and so on?
Yeah. That's an excellent question, and I have to stipulate I'm not an expert on tourism promotion, so you won't necessarily get the best advice from me, but I can share my
But you've served already as a guide to your relatives and friends,
right? That's true. That's true. So I'm working up that. Maybe this is my next career after I leave the State Department. I don't know, tourism ambassador. But first of all, I want to say that we've done some things already in the past to help promote that awareness.
Right.
And I think I think it was in 2023, our embassy actually, through our exchange programs, brought over a group of American travel journalists, essentially.
Right.
So I think it's called the Society for American Travel Writers.
Correct.
And there was a group of 14 who came and toured and experienced your country, and then went home and wrote a lot of good pieces that appeared in various travel magazines and online and so on. And I think that's actually a very impactful way, because they're the ones, these journalists, these writers are the ones who shape our public's perception in many respects. It's not enough, of course. I mean, what would be really great is if there was a movie about Kazakhstan, maybe like it could be something historical or it could be something modern that became really popular in America, and was not Borat, was not Borat, which Borat's already kind of a distant memory for a lot of people, even American moviegoers. But something new that became a hit that would reach a very broad audience and kind of get people asking the question. So, what is this place, and can I visit it? But on a more gradual and incremental level, reaching the influencers, right. Let's call them influencers, who write about travel, write about tourism. I also note that I think was it in 2024 that Almaty was named one of the New York Times top destinations to visit. I remember back to just coincidentally, I think it was a coincidence, my first year as ambassador in Tashkent, the New York Times had Uzbekistan on their list of the top 50 or whatever. So maybe
they follow you.
Maybe there's a pattern here. Maybe there's a pattern. I don't know. Okay. But so getting in major publications, major websites, major, whether it's CNN or something that reaches a lot of people is key to raising that awareness. But also at the more sort of targeted level, these influencers, these travel writers, I think is important. Maybe we can repeat that, do that again next year or the year after, something similar to that. It's easy for me to say since I'm about to leave my job to let my embassy team follow up. But seriously, I think that's the way to start and to further develop that awareness. But you're right in that there's a deficit currently in the United States in terms of knowledge about this region and about Kazakhstan in particular. And I get this all the time from people who are coming to work at our embassy, Americans who come, and they always share with me, when I told my relatives that I was going to Kazakhstan, they said, "Oh, be careful, it's dangerous there, isn't it?" And of course they're thinking of maybe some other stan or something, and they have to dispel those myths and those stereotypes.
That's the perception we get.
But I will do my part. I've been doing my part, and I will continue doing my part to educate and to raise awareness. And of course, I can share specific examples of the beauty I've seen, the cultural richness, the hospitality of the people, all those things that can promote people wanting to come here.
Thank you so much. And speaking of the movies and different shows, actually, one of the new shows is the filming is underway. About medieval Kazakhstan, and in particular about the eldest son of Genghis Khan, Juchi.
Ah, yes.
So hopefully it will be on Netflix after it's done, because the producers and the film directors are actually those who filmed famous series about Ottoman Empire in Turkey and so on, and those actually series got really popular around the world. So hopefully, yeah, it's
fantastic.
They just finished the script and the costumes, the cast. So about 150 local artists will be featured there, and a bunch of foreigners as well. So.
Now, is it going to be? Will the language of the movie itself be Kazakh, English? What?
I think it will be English.
It'll be English, but then there'll be probably a subtitle version available or dubbing or something. Yeah.
Right, because we're aiming at major streaming platforms, like Amazon and Apple TV and of course Netflix. Yes.
Right.
Everybody's obsessed with Netflix.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's really good to hear, and I look forward to watching it myself. And by the way, you met, it's interesting, you focused on Juche Khan. I actually had a chance, I went to the mausoleum of Juche Khan in Ulitau when I was there last summer, and had a really interesting, that's one of many kind of historical tours that I was able to do.
Right. It's one of the sacred places in Kazakhstan, actually.
So I heard.
People worship it a lot, yes. And when you go there, you actually feel it. It's a power place, yes.
Yes, there's a spiritual feeling there that's very strong.
Yeah. Speaking of the promotion and the Society of American Travel Writers, we've been chasing them for years, and thank you so much for helping us to organize this. But after they came here with a small group, we chased them in Bogota, actually. I went there to pitch them again to bring their annual conference to Astana or Almaty or both, yes, because due to some geopolitical crisis happening around, they changed their decision after the pandemic, but they were going to. So I went to Colombia and spoke to them. I told them that we're thousands kilometers away from the conflict area, but they should come. And hopefully, fingers crossed, this year they should be coming back with a bigger conference.
Oh, fantastic.
Around 150 people. Probably.
Now they were in Bogota because that's where they were having their conference last year.
They travel. So nomads, they choose a new destination each year.
Right. Excellent.
So it's I think promotion is key, and I know in the United States there is a company called Brand USA. It's an organization that is dedicated for travel promotion. And when I went to New York University, that's where I studied for my master's degree in tourism management. My thesis, the final project, was actually on the executive order by Barack Obama, the first one by any of the presidents of the United States on tourism, executive order on tourism. So yes, and according to that order, the number of consular staff would have to be increased in China and Brazil, major markets at that time, 12 years ago, and the creation of Brand USA, the agency that would do first time ever the joint promotion on the federal level of the United States as a premier travel destination. So we looked into this. We interviewed many the so-called DMOs, destination management organizations, such as Visit California or Visit Orlando and so on, trying to get their take on how things are unfolding, because it was unprecedented. And the best thing I liked about that organization, because it had brought together major businesses along with the government. In fact, it's such a successful public-private partnership. Disney was there on board, Hilton, Marriott, and everybody chipped in, with the promotion money. And then the government matched whatever funds the business raised. And the money they used on the federal level was some part of the proceeds coming from the visa waiver fee. You know that every other year, people on the visa waiver program, they pay. Back then it was $14, now it's $21. So some part of that money goes into that organization in order to match the funds. So it was an excellent arrangement, and I really like that. Yeah. And I actually can see that there are some results of this organizations. You see the increase in travel. I think the U.S. already hit the 2019 pre-pandemic record in terms of arrivals. Around 77 million, I think, people visited the United States. Wow. Of course, the majority of them, almost 50%, are coming from neighboring countries such as Canada and Mexico. But still, that's just like in Kazakhstan. The majority of travelers are coming from Russia and Uzbekistan or Central Asia.
What about China?
Altogether,
what are the
China
numbers
is top 5 also, and last year we held the Year of Kazakhstan's Tourism in China that helped us to place focus, and both presidents announced that year, and this year the Chinese side will reciprocate with the Chinese tourism in Kazakhstan with a year full of different activities, and hope we can do this one day with the United States. And again, once the direct flight is there, and again, in terms of visa, I mean, it's such a wonderful condition, I think, for everyone, with visa waiver for the nationals of the United States, with 10-year visa for nationals of Kazakhstan to the United States. I think the time has come to improve the traffic both ways. And
absolutely,
just before our podcast, I checked CDC, the Center of Disease Control website. There are no special precautions about Kazakhstan. It's just observing regular kind of cautions with COVID-19 vaccine and probably Hep A. That's it. And no special travel warnings on the Department of State's website. So I think it's quite favorable time. And
absolutely,
Central Asia is more or less known again to the United States. So I think that's the high time for the promotion. And again, back to one of my previous questions, we have to now narrow down what we're going to offer to the United States. Given the versatility that you mentioned, the landscapes and everything, 124 different ethnic groups living in Kazakhstan. You can imagine the fusion, and you've tasted the fusion of cuisines and different cultures and so on.
Yeah.
But I think there's this one saying I really love about travel marketing. You cannot be everything to everyone. So we really have to focus and narrow down. And I was wondering, and just following your recent trip to many of the regions of Kazakhstan, and especially Barsakelmes Island in Aral Sea, and so on. Do you think this so-called dark tourism would be interested to the educated and hopefully affluent cohort of people coming to the places where something probably bad happened, but back to Semipalatin's test range and so on. There are many examples around the world, such as Osvensim, for instance, and many other camps. And you've been to Karaganda, probably visited Karlag or Algiers outside of Astana.
I visited Algiers, I visited Karlag.
Would that be something that can attract?
I visited the steppe log in... I think it was called steppe log in Zhezkazgan. The camp.
I haven't been to that one yet.
The camp this is the camp where there was an uprising of the prisoners in 1953. I think it was after Stalin died. There was like this big uprising, and they took over the camp. And then it was put down brutally by the Soviet army. So there's a whole history there. Very much dark tourism, as you were saying.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I've been to all that. Well, so in thinking of niches, tourism niches, or ways to market and present. Obviously some niches are really narrow ones and smaller ones, but real, and others are more kind of have more mass appeal. Right. And so obviously I think strategically, and I'm sure you've already thought this through, you probably have to have a mix of both. If you just do the niche stuff, it's not going to bring the volume of people that you really want to have for the economic benefit. I do think that there's definitely people in America and other places in Europe and elsewhere who are intrigued and interested in exploring some of these, maybe let's call them places of tragedy, or whether it's natural disaster or human disaster. And I've been to plenty of those in Kazakhstan in my time here. I do, but I suspect, and this is not based on any survey or any market research, that the numbers are not great. That is, you're not going to find
in terms of visitation.
But it will tend to be a group of people who have just high disposable incomes and are willing to spend some money. So again, it's kind of either or. It's not a clear market win, but I think there's a market there. And again, Kazakhstan certainly has a lot to offer in that respect. We talked about the camps. There's also the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site, which I visited. That's harder because I think you need to get special permissions to go there. But I don't think it hasn't been like heavily developed for tourism, but there's definitely interest out there. That my stories of visiting the polygon in Semey, when I tell them back in the U.S., I get wide eyes and lots of questions and really a lot of interest there. And then it's also another thing that's not exactly the same thing. It's not dark tourism so much, but it's kind of Soviet nostalgia, let's say.
Back to USSR?
Back to USSR tourism. There's a lot of potential for that too here. And I'll just mention two things that that I have personally participated in, both in Astana, or really in Kaliningrad, and in Almaty. There are walking tours you can take with people who are expert in Soviet architecture, Soviet design, Soviet murals, the wall murals, and can take you to really out of the way places that you wouldn't necessarily walk into, and tell stories about how this came to be and what it meant and what the symbolism is. And so for those who are, history buffs and Soviet, have an interest in that Soviet period, there's also a lot to offer here too. Actually, also in Karaganda, I remember going to some places where there's the remains.
Some of the streets are actually feel like they still have the spirit of USSR.
They do. Yeah. So that's another. So maybe you could combine those two: this kind of Soviet nostalgia with the dark corners or the tragic corners into a package of tours and so on. So I think there's potential there. I think there's definitely potential for more ecotourism and for kind of adventure tourism. And we were talking about this earlier, but there's so many incredibly beautiful places, and the whole mountainous area in the southeast and from Almaty region and into Jetasu and further east. And also, I would add to that Uzbekistan and East Kazakhstan and all that area, the Katon Karagay, exactly. And that whole, which I had a chance to visit on a personal, not a business trip last summer with my family. My son was visiting from the U.S. and my wife and I went to Katon Karagay. We went to Bukhtarma, the reservoir there, and stayed in a house right on the lake. And absolutely beautiful place. We lots of hiking opportunities there, boating opportunities, water sports. So you could definitely do more in that area, because the market for that, I'd say, is a little bigger than the dark tourism Soviet nostalgia market, but also still a niche. But I also think that for maybe the more mass market that wants a little bit a sampling of things, wants to and maybe doesn't have as much time or as much money. There's I think the potential is, and again, I recognize you're probably already doing this and already thinking in this way, but the combination of Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan works really well for that market. Absolutely. The transborder and going, there you probably wouldn't take people to East Kazakhstan or to more out of the way places, or to Mangistau, because it just takes so much longer to get to those places. But rather, focusing on Almaty, Astana, and maybe something in between, maybe a stop in Karaganda or whatever to visit the Karlog. That's where I would see, in terms of the volume of people, the most potential for that cross-border package.
What did your son enjoy the most I guess it was short travel, probably not.
Well, he was here for 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And so we spent much of the first week in East Kazakhstan, in Uzbekistan. And then the second week, after a few days in Astana and doing some tours there, all of us went down to Almaty, and he spent the rest of his time in Almaty. And he loved it. He was so happy. He even got to do so. And going back to the adventure tourism thing I was talking about, my wife and I are not up for physically up for some of the things that he wants to do. But he got a chance to do some rock climbing. He's an avid rock climber. He does it all the time back in the U.S. So while he was here, he got a little bit of a taste of rock climbing, both indoor, the kind of where a gym that has, but also a little bit of outdoor.
Right.
So I think that was his favorite part of it. I think he also he loved the food. He loved sampling new kinds of food, and we went to some amazing. I remember there's this restaurant called Sandık,
exactly.
which is both in Almaty and here, and we went to the one in Almaty, and he just loved trying everything, and he even I think grew to appreciate hummus. He would order it. He would actually order hummus.
Oh, great to hear this.
Yeah. So again, there's just a lot of potential.
What's your favorite pick in terms of food? I mean, three dishes besides bish parmak and.
And plov, which I mentioned before. I really like the traditional, is it called koje, that's made for Nowruz? I like the taste of it. I wish it was made more frequently throughout the year because I've really enjoyed that. And we even had a chance, we had a famous chef, I think it's Aigerim Musa Gajinova, came to our house at our embassy here and did a cooking class. I think they filmed it as a
She's
video.
She's a researcher. She goes and tries to find all these old forgotten recipes and so on.
Yeah, exactly. So I remember it was around the time of Nowruz, and we made the koje with her and then got to taste it. So that's been a nice thing too. But
I read in one of your interviews about people serving baursak in Usk-Kamennogorsk on a winter day.
Yes, that's right. That was my very first trip to the regions was Usk-Kamen. I think it was January of 2023, so it was just 2 months after I arrived. Right. And that memory that I shared there is still very sharp, where we were, it was a day like it is today in Astana, cold, snowy, windy, bleak, sort of bleak. And we walked out to the river, I guess they call it the Strelka, where the two rivers,
confluence of two rivers,
the two rivers meet, and to show us that. And I was, shivering along the river with my coat. And then we were greeted by, a group of young people carrying trays of hot borsak, and I think we had something to dip it, some
kaymak,
kaymak, to dip in, and some hot tea, some tare tea. Wonderful. I think there's something about the taste of food at the right time in the right place that cements a memory for you, like that. I'll remember that visit more than anything else because of that food experience. Right.
And I really hope that the warmth and hospitality of local people would make up for some cold weather and unbearable probably conditions in some certain areas. But nowadays, I think the travelers are so adventurous. They can even go to war zones. They go to minus 52 Northern Pole experience, Antarctic and so on and so on. And I truly hope that we can find the best product, that would fit probably the expectations of travelers who won't probably see snow for the first time in their life. I mean, people coming from Southeast Asia or from South America and so on, and even from as close as Middle East. People would come here and they see snow-capped mountains, and this is something they enjoy. Yeah. So we really hope we can diversify our product. And speaking of the transborder tours that you mentioned, next week I'm going to speak to one of the travel organizers who, with the help of US aid, they created a transborder bicycle route in Western Balkans, actually connecting 8 countries. So,
wow.
Yes, there was a kind of walking route in the past, connecting different villages in Slovenia, in North Macedonia, and so on and so on. But it was a single kind of route going through all those places.
Right.
Now it's bicycle, with proper navigation and I guess proper tracks and so on. This is something we would like to discuss, and hopefully USA can support us here as well.
Yeah, that sounds like a great initiative. I guess, and because it's bicycle, you can cover longer distances because the distances are greater here than in the Balkans. So
Yes.
But that's a great thing. But you're thinking of it as a cross border,
cross border with Kyrgyzstan as well, and probably other countries. I know there were cyclers in the past who ventured, going from Kazakhstan all the way to Tajikistan on the bicycles. And one of the guests here, your former colleague Marco Alberti, he actually spoke about his bike travel from Almaty to Bishkek, 17 hours, on the bicycle.
Wow.
So, people do this,
Yeah,
so
I know. I hear about these things too, and I can't even imagine. But that's that's good. And there's again, in terms of niches or attracting the tourism market, there's a lot of interest and a lot of demand for that kind of thing these days. People are more and more, as you say, adventurous.
Exactly.
And they're bold.
Exactly. They're bold.
Bold tourists, and they want experiences like that.
Yeah, they're as bold as trying to sneak into Baikonur, which is by far one of the most protected areas here in Kazakhstan, and they get jailed, of course. And then one of the tours, unfortunately, died from France. He suffered, I guess, overheating or so on.
Wow.
People are somehow attracted to forbidden areas, and so on. And we truly think that with the transfer of certain areas, platforms on the Baikonur Cosmodrome back to Kazakhstan, and you know about the Baikonur space program, our own Kazakh space program that is underway now, and some of the we call them plashatka, the platforms that the space launches on different areas, and now transfer back to Kazakhstan, and we hope to keep bringing foreigners there to showcase the launch and to touch the space history, and now with the decommissioning of the International Space Station, I think Baikonur will once again attract more attention now, as there are many people who worship space in general, or astronomical tours, stargazing, or whatever is connected now, especially with Mr. Musk's program of bringing the rockets back on Earth, or somehow exploring the distant planets and so on. We truly hope that Baikonur will pick up one day as a tourism destination as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and I think I was just thinking, because it's literally on the road to the Aral Sea, from Kizilorda to Uralsk, you pass by Baikonur. Maybe that could be, if it becomes easier, if access becomes easier and people can visit there, whether it's for launches or even for just to visit, to combine it so that you could do something, go out to the Aral Sea area, where I know there's a lot of interest in developing tourism. I think it's, I'll be honest, I think it's an uphill battle in terms of attracting tourists to that area, largely because it's just it takes so long and it's so uncomfortable to get there in terms of the quality of the roads. But combining it with Baikonur would be a great package to offer people, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And now with the so-called middle corridor, so many roads are going through that particular area, and then starting probably with truck drivers, in the beginning, and then a lot of more people will, I guess, be attracted to those areas, because that particular chunk of the road goes exactly through all the major attractions of Kazakhstan, with Baikonur, with Turkistan, of course Almaty, Taraz, and all this beautiful cities. So it's not just the goods, and of course, that is very important to the economy of Kazakhstan. That side of the economy is growing, but following the goods, we really hope that people will also follow suit, and go as the infrastructure will grow in order to cater to truck drivers. Of course, that infrastructure can also be used by regular tourists.
Yeah. We in our drive to Uralsk and then back during our visit there, which was last April, we stopped at a lot of truck stops. There's a good infrastructure along the way, so every time we needed to use a toilet or have some food or whatever, we would there were truck stops everywhere along that highway.
Believe it or not, is number one in terms of so-called rest areas, roadside service in Kazakhstan, by quality and by number and by the location that they're placed.
Yeah. Another, by the way, I'm thinking, another region that we haven't talked about, which I think has big tourism potential. I know, again, that you're moving in that direction is Mangistau.
Mangistau.
And
That's where we were.
That's right.
2022, exactly.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So, but I actually, that was, if I have regrets about things that I didn't do or didn't have enough time to do fully, it was to go. I wanted to go back to Mangistau and see.
Bozhura,
So we went to Bozhura. We had an excursion to Bozhura. We were actually there at the same time as the European Union had a big delegation of ambassadors, and we kind of joined up with them. But we did not. That was all we saw. We only had time to go to Bozhura and see the incredible vista there, and then go back to Aktau, but not to go to these other. There are the mosques there, those in the caves or whatever.
In the caves, exactly. Engraved into rocks and
and some other things. And then there's what is it called? Dalina
Sharov. Yes.
We didn't get there either.
Rock formations, completely round shaped, that people would dub as dinosaurs' eggs.
Yes, that's what it looks like.
Some of them are split half, and from the inside, they would remind the candy called toffee. With a nut inside.
Right.
Yeah, so many amazing, the landscape itself, and then the different attractions in Mangistau. So I think it's an open air museum, and it's the whole area actually with Caucasia and Mangistau and part of Turkmenistan. It used to be the bottom of the ancient ocean, Tethys. Yes. That's why some remnants of the sea you can find. Shark teeth. For instance,
we came back with a lot of those shark teeth and little fossilized sea life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What would be your top 3 destinations? I know you loved the East Kazakhstan, probably Katon, or what are other areas?
Oh man, that's hard to say. And I also, of course, I don't want to insult anyone by not including them on the list, because I found interesting things everywhere. So maybe, I'll say that. Maybe I'll just give you my top 3 memories in terms of an experience, which is not to say that I would put that at the top of the list for tourists to visit necessarily. I think, again, going back to what we were saying earlier, as far as recommendation for tourists, if they have a limited time, and of course I've had family and friends come who had a limited time, I would of course tell them to go to Almaty, explore the city and also the region, and go out, because from there it's very accessible to go to some beautiful natural places, as well as, I didn't mention the Tanbali, the petroglyph area.
Yes.
That was last August we went there, and I was just blown away by that. So I would recommend starting there and then getting out into the region, coming to Astana and just seeing the modernity and the amazing and the museums and so many things here. Probably adding on a trip to Algiers. If you have a little more time, drive down to Karaganda to see Karaganda, but also to visit the Karlog Museum. And if they have just a little bit more time, I would probably say maybe add on Uzbekistan and Katan Koragai or something in East Kazakhstan, just for the contrast. But in terms of my own experiences and sort of what like the memories that I'll take with me, it's interesting. A lot of them are connected with food. to, as I was saying before, you know, it's that cements the memory in your mind. But I'd say one of them, actually, this might surprise you a little bit, was recent trip last fall to Ural, to Uralsk,
Western
Kazakhstan, where I had a very diverse schedule, lots of different meetings. I met the Akim, I met with businesses, civil society people. I also got to look at the attempts or the rebuilding that was done after the floods, because remember earlier in 2024, they had horrible flooding there. And so we actually visited some of the new housing that was built to resettle people and saw some of the damage that had been caused. But one experience really stood out in that trip, which was I visited an orchard that is operated, it's called Asayev, the Asayev Nursery. And it's operated by a husband and wife who are scientists and researchers.
Right.
And they're growing there varieties of apples and grapes that are unique species, like original species, varieties of these plants. And their goal is to preserve the diversity. It's about biodiversity and this diversity of species. But what's so special about it, first of all, the passion that this husband and wife have, Kairat Karimov, I think is the name of the guy, I don't remember his wife's name at the moment, was the passion towards their goal and their project. But then the fruit and tasting the fruit, because it was like a taste test we did. We walked into the rows of grapevines and then into the apple tree rows and just sampled. We just picked the fruit off the tree, and it was delicious beyond anything I can describe. Much, better than anything you would find in the grocery store. Maybe about the same as buying from a farmer, on the roadside. But I was just so struck by this unique, corner. Most people that I talked to when I came back to Astana said there are apples growing and grapes growing in Uralsk. I mean, they didn't think that this was a place for it. Right. Although Kairat explained to us that it's actually climatic conditions there are ideal for apples. It's like it's perfect, kind of weather.
Very interesting, yes. Yeah. And that Kazakhstan is the birthplace of apples.
Exactly.
But I guess it's more to cliche thinking that people would probably think of picture Almaty and the vicinity for apples, probably Zhetysu, but not Uralsk, the western. But you're right, yes.
And then I guess another one that sticks out for me that was also fairly recent, this was early September, I think, of last year, and this is very accessible for tourists who are coming here, who come to Astana. So 2 hours or so south of Astana is the Korgalzhun Nature Reserve.
Bird watching.
Yes, and I went there. We had a bird watching trip with an amazing guide who was, a Kazakh guide who knew where to find all the birds and what they were and identify them, and he was fantastic. And of course, you can see the migrating flamingos there. So we saw the flamingos. We saw 30 other, I think it was almost like 30 other species of birds during the day there. And what was really special was we saw the saiga.
Really?
Yeah, we saw the saiga antelopes, and we got to see how fast they are because they run so fast. And the most amazing moment, which was almost too good to be true, was we were viewing the flamingos using one of these scopes, like a telescope that they set up on a stand. Our guide had it, so you could look in there and really see the flamingos well. And while we were watching the flamingos, some saiga came running right in front of us. So we actually have some photographs of the saiga and then behind them the flamingos. Unbelievable. So those are,
what a luck, to spot both, species.
So anyway, those are a couple of stories. Again, when people visiting may not always have time to do the things I had the luxury of time to do, but there's so much to experience here. And coming back to what I said at the beginning, at the end of the day, there's beautiful mosques and mausoleums. There's interesting history and culture. There's amazing food, there's beautiful nature, but it's really about the people. At the end of the day, it's the people you meet, the stories they share, and the warmth that you feel from those interactions.
Right. Well, very insightful conversation, Daniel. Thank you so much for all these stories. Yes, and I guess my last question would be, how do we attract and help, I guess, potential American investors to diversify their portfolio and look into tourism in Kazakhstan? I mean, there are so many improvements. There is hopefully a repeal of Jackson-Vanik Amendment in favor of Kazakhstan, the direct flight, visa-free, and you see a bunch of American hospitality operator chains like Marriott, you see Hilton, and so on. So looks like it's safe. I mean, I've mentioned CDC and Department of State's travel warrants and so on. It's favorable. It's about the time. People are adventurous. It's cool to be here. We've been on CNN travel list recently. We've been in New York Times best destinations to visit, Lonely Planet, you name it. I mean, we've been everywhere. Telegraph, Le Figaro, etc. Now, I guess the question is how we bring the investors who would probably help us raise the bar, so we can hold up to the expectations of discerned American travelers nowadays.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I should just note because you've mentioned a couple direct flights a couple of times, and I know this is it happens that this is perhaps the most common question I get when I'm interviewed by the media here. That everyone always wants to know, when is there going to be direct flights? And I won't give you the long answer, and I think you know this already, but at the moment, the process of establishing direct flights is not as much about the regulations and passing certain inspections and so on, although that's happening. So for example, our Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, had a team here. They came here in the fall, I think, or late summer, and they started that process, and there's more to go on that. And also our Transportation Safety Administration, TSA, has to inspect airports and the safety standards, and that process has begun. So I'm very confident that will be taken care of. The issue now is the aircraft, and Air Astana still waiting on delivery of the Boeing Dreamliners, and the estimate of when those will come keeps sliding backwards a bit, and it's unfortunately has a lot to do with some of the troubles that Boeing has had in the last 2 years. Nonetheless, I mean, I'm confident it will happen, but at this point, I think they're now saying early 2026 before the aircraft will be ready. So fingers crossed that
we have time to prepare.
Works. Exactly, we have time to prepare. As far as promoting or Kazakhstan for investors, and particularly investors in the tourism sector, I think part of that will be connected with the general awareness raising that you're already doing, having the travel writers write about it, all that stuff will help, because obviously the people who make investment decisions and who run companies are reading that stuff and also themselves may be interested in traveling and visiting places. But the other thing is, and something that we can do to help on this, and I, as I leave, I will make sure that to remind my folks, my team about it, and that is that we have this thing called the Foreign Commercial Service, which is part of our Commerce Department, and it has an office here in Kazakhstan. They're actually based in Almaty, but we talk constantly with them.
Right.
And one of the things they do is actually bring American investors to explore opportunities. They organize trade missions. The last 2 years, we've had, I think, 3 trade missions in the last 2 years. Groups of anywhere from 15 to 20 companies that come and travel around and just look at, talk to potential partners and explore opportunities. So we should make sure that, tourism sector is part of that. And I pledge that, to the extent I can influence that, I will try to make sure it happens. And again, but I'm optimistic that the future is bright for tourism in Kazakhstan and especially from America.
hope you get a chance to visit with your family, with your son and daughter, and come back and revisit, I guess, and reminisce your great time, hopefully great time.
Yeah, absolutely.
to Kazakhstan and the region. And thank you so much for being a great friend to Kazakh nations. I know you've been very active traveling, as you said, visiting universities, speaking at different events, and promoting both American and Kazakh culture. I liked all of your Instagram posts and Facebook when you spoke Kazakh, of course, or in any other language here. So thank you so much once again, and in particular for this conversation. Again, it's your last day. I understand you're very busy, so many things to accomplish. So we really appreciate your today's partaking in our episode. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you. Көп рахмет.
Rahmet.